Hey everybody, this is Stelly after we close out, and today I want to talk about the show up follow-up. It is a old school sales technique, a hack to save your most precious deals. Really, it needs to be used very carefully, but if you use it, it can be incredibly powerful. Before I jump into that though, let me talk a little bit about the magic, the pros and cons of in-person sales. So specifically when it comes to startups and technology-enabled salespeople and sales teams around the world, I know that meeting with prospects or customers in person seems like a waste of time, right? It seems like super old school, outdated, inefficient. We don't really like to do that anymore, right? We like to use email, we like to use the phone, we like to use and build inside sales methodologies, processes, and technologies in order to leverage our time and impact, right? And I mean, by default, we at Close have built an inside sales CRM to empower you to do so, right? We're building technology to make you more productive, to help you close more deals and make more sales. So why do I want to talk about in-person selling, right? So, the reason is very easy, because it's not dead. In-person sales will never die. It will always have a place. It has usefulness and value. You just need to know when to use it and when not to use it. Let's quickly go over when not to use it and why a big chunk of the top of the funnel of how we do sales is being eaten up by inside sales techniques and automation techniques increasingly, and why we're not going door to door knocking on people's office doors or homes to sell, and why that is a thing of the past and something that's happened less and less and less. The reason why in-person sales sucks, the thing about it that is not positive or not impactful or useful, is that it's incredibly time intensive, right? You have to travel physically somewhere, to meet a prospect, and then you have to physically travel back to your office or to the next prospect. That time it takes you to get your body to a place X, Y, and Z, that oftentimes will be a lot more time than the time that you end up selling and talking to the person. If the person is not there, if they forgot about the appointment, it's a massive, massive time sink. So it takes a huge amount of time and energy, and it only allows you to interact with one person usually at a time, right? Especially in areas of prospecting, this seems just painfully inefficient for today's modern salesperson, right? Going to prospect by knocking on people's doors and say, hey, you've never heard of me, but let me tell you what we're doing, and maybe you qualify, maybe this is a fit, and maybe we should schedule a time for a more formal presentation. That's just insane. You're not going to really move very far. You're not going to be able to move the needle in a way that you want to, right? We today have the internet, we have email, we have social media, we have all these technologies and tools that allow us to prospect en masse, to get people's contact information, to reach out to them and follow up in sequences, all and fully automated. We're able to call them, if we want to, or ping them on social media, and we're able to contact and prospect a lot more people in a much more efficient way from our desk and our laptop or computer than we could if we moved out in some kind of an office building or office area and tried to go from place to place to see if we can find somebody that might be interested. So prospecting, doing that in person is just a massive waste of time. Scheduling things, showing up somewhere just to schedule a time to come back, massive waste of time, right? And even qualifying, I would say that in that first part of the relationship where all you're trying to do is for both parties to quickly verify and uncover and explore if there's a mutual fit, doing that in person, in most cases, the disclaimer is we're not talking here about obviously multi-million dollar deals. We're talking about more SMB sales. We're talking about B2B, but deals that are worth thousands or tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands, but not tens of millions of dollars. In those deals, you might have to do everything, the entire sales cycle, or a really big chunk of it in person, and still sort of old school to a large degree. But when it comes to prospecting and qualifying, that's much better done today in the virtual space through inside sales by enabling and utilizing technology, right? Now, where is in-person sales still incredibly valuable? Well, it's valuable in building relationships, first and foremost, right? It is incredibly valuable because when you talk to people in person, it's much easier for people to like you, to connect with you on a much more social, much more human level than it is just by hearing your voice on the phone or reading your message in an email. It is a much more context-rich environment, right? You cannot just hear people's voice or read their words. You see their body language. You can tell by their environment the context in which they live in or make decisions in. And that can be incredibly powerful. They can say one thing with their voice or with their words and a completely different thing with their body. You know, they could be saying, yes, we're considering it, but their whole body is shaking no and being totally tense and in pain. And you can pick up on that in person and build the rapport and the connection to lean in, to look somebody in the eye, to demonstrate through your whole being in that moment, your presence, that you picked up on something, that you notice it, that you acknowledge and appreciate it, and just ask them, hey, is there any kind of conflict that we haven't talked about? Is there anything that's stressful about making this decision that I'm not aware of, where I might be able to be of use to you, and you could utilize me as a resource? Is there anything I can do to help? It seems like you're ready, but there might be something else as well. And those little moments are very hard to capture in an email exchange, in a social media exchange, sometimes even on the phone. The phone is the closest to the in-person, right? It's somewhere in between a totally virtual interaction via email or a totally in-person interaction. But these moments sometimes, that richness of information and communication that you get through sitting in the same physical space with somebody and getting their entire body to communicate with you, their tonality to communicate with you, and the words that they say, like get the entire breadth and depth of their communication, their intention, what they really feel, not just what they think, can be insanely valuable for you to pick up on potential pitfalls or things to go back to and double click on, talk a little bit further, or uncover if there's a potential conflict or problem there. You are sharing a moment in time together. And that shared experience can be also incredibly powerful, right? Having a coffee together while conversing, while exploring, while talking about a deal or a pilot or a technology or product, can just be an incredibly bonding experience, right? Versus you sipping on your coffee on your own while talking to somebody on the phone or writing an email. Sharing that coffee, having lunch or dinner, sharing a meal, breaking bread together is how we make friends. It's how we interact as humans and how we've been interacting and building connections and friendships and alliances as human beings for, hundreds and hundreds of years. It's ingrained in our DNA, which technology isn't oftentimes. So sitting down and having a meal with somebody, or having a drink, a beer, a coffee, a glass of wine, having a shared experience can really depthen the connection and the social fabric of the interaction that you have with your customers or your prospects. And that can be incredibly valuable, right? And then when you meet with people in person, there's usually two benefits that you get from that. One, the downside that I mentioned of it takes a lot of time to go and visit somebody in person. The plus of that is that when you meet with people in person, the hypothesis, the base assumption is that you're going to spend a lot more time with them. And their base assumption is they're going to spend a lot more time with you, right? We rarely have an in-person meeting that's 10 minutes long. It's very rare. When we meet with people in person, we assume we're going to have to give them typically around an hour of our time. A phone call can be 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, but an in-person meeting usually is something that we just assume is going to take us at least an hour, right? So you get a lot more time from people. Now you have to be able to use that time, in a useful manner and not waste any of it. But if you need time, in person can be incredibly powerful. And then the last thing is that you get a lot more of their attention usually, if you deserve it, right? But you will get it. The downside of selling through inside sales is that oftentimes people are also at their desk, at their computer, on their phone while they're talking to you or while they're responding to a message from you. So they're constantly distracted. They're not giving you their undivided attention. It's very, very rare. Just ask yourself, when was the last time you gave somebody in a meeting your complete and undivided attention while being on your laptop, right? You usually check out your email or you get some notification. Even if you give them 90% of your attention, it's very rare you give them 100%. The sad news is, in many cases in today's world, you might just get, not 90%, you might be lucky if you get half of their attention. When you meet them in person, when you're able to have eye contact, right, with them, yeah, they might pick up their phone if there's something, a call or something urgent going on. Yeah, they might check an email to refer to something that they talked to you about. But in general, it's considered pretty rude, and people are pretty good at not looking at their laptop, reading their emails, checking out their Facebook or Tinder while they're talking to you, while you're at their office or while you've met at a coffee place or having lunch together and breaking bread together, right? So you get a lot more of their time, you get a lot more of their attention, you get a lot more of their communication, the way they feel, because you're in a context-rich environment. And you get a lot more human connection. They might really like you. They might really feel a certain way about you while meeting you in person in a much more human and lasting and deep imprinting way, much more so than they could ever feel about you in an email, in a tweet, or even on a quick phone call, right? Those are all the benefits. Now, again, for most startup salespeople, for most salespeople that do inside sales, that utilize the power, the magic of technology at the top of the funnel, we are losing the art of selling in person. We're losing the art of picking up the phone and talking to somebody, and even more so losing the art of strategically deciding, let's meet. Let's meet for coffee or lunch. Let's sit down. Let's break bread. Let's chat in person. Let me come with my team to address all the concerns that your team has. Let's sit out. Let's hash this out in person. We're losing that. It seems like an outdated technique. So modern salespeople don't use in-person sales enough. And that's your big opportunity. You want to do both. You want to use technology as much as possible, but not more. And you want to use the power of human connection whenever possible, whenever it's the most valuable or strategically the smartest thing to do. And know that fewer and fewer of your competitors would ever choose that option. And that will help you stand out. And now, when should you do that, right? There's obviously money concerns here, like, how much is it going to increase the cost of acquisition? The cost of my personal time if I have to travel somewhere and meet in person. That needs to be considered in terms of like, how big is this deal? How much is this deal worth? The bigger the deal, the more it is worth to you to make something happen, the wiser it is to invest heavily in it and to potentially meet in person. That's one consideration when it comes to in-person versus virtual. The other consideration is, or the other situations maybe where you might want to use this, is in moments of strong conflict, right? When there's like all kinds of stakeholders getting involved later in the deal, in the life cycle of the deal, and there's all kinds of like blockages and problems, and there's like negativity came up, maybe you dropped the ball somehow, maybe they read something in a contract they really disliked. So it's late in the deal, and all of a sudden there's conflict, there's all this commotion, all these problems. Trying to figure out high conflict situation and resolve these in writing, in email, or even on the phone call is much more challenging than sitting down in person, right? Again, because in person it's going to be much easier for you to create a rapport. It's going to be much easier for you to connect and convey in a human way that this was an error, that you're trustworthy, that this can be figured out, that you have good intentions. You're going to get a lot more of their time and calm, focused attention. All these things are really, really important, especially when it comes to conflict. So during the last stages of a deal, when things become increasingly hard and there's new stakeholders and entities introduced and there's potential conflict or misunderstanding, I would highly advise you, if the deal is worth it to you, to meet in person, to elevate this and escalate it into an in-person meeting. You'll see that the chances of resolving the conflict, the chances of getting to a positive outcome are going to be dramatically higher than keeping it in email or on the phone. And then the last but not least, and this is really the hack that I mentioned at the very beginning of this, is the follow-up. When a prospect goes quiet and it's a prospect that's worth a lot, and you have a high level of urgency, you need a resolution, a yes or a no right now, or you already lost the deal, something you might have invested in a ton of time, and they send you an email in the 11th hour telling you they went with a competitor or some other vendor. Again, if it's worth it, if it's truly a significant deal, you might want to use the age-old salesperson hack of, I was just in the area and I thought I'll drop by, or I'm going to be in the area tomorrow, I wanted to drop by, shake hands, we've been talking for months on the phone, I have a little gift for your team. Even if we didn't end up working together, I'd like to drop by and just say hi and get to know the team. This seems so old school. I don't think almost no startup is using this, but it's still working. And there's thousands of salespeople around the world. I guarantee you every week that are closing millions and millions worth of deals by using this simple hack. But just saying, hey, I was in the area. I thought I'd drop by and say hi. Do we have 10 minutes, 20 minutes to quickly chat in person? And you might think, well, that's Stelly, and Stelly is this loud salesperson, right? But we're much more of a technology company, and our team, or me as a founder, I'm much more of an engineer and a developer. I'm much more technical. I'm not really that aggressive. Showing up at somebody's office, that seems too aggressive. That's not an option or a tactic that's useful to us or available to us. I want to share a quick story about Sam Altman with you to wrap up this video. Sam Altman is, today's Y Combinator, the president of YC, of Y Combinator, which is the world's best and most famous probably startup incubator, and an organization that has transformed the way startups are being built. Companies like Airbnb, companies like Dropbox, there's countless of these billion-dollar unicorn companies that are all Y Combinator companies. And Sam Altman was himself a technologist and a startup founder going through YC in I think the very first batch. And today he's the president of Y Combinator. He's running the most influential startup and entrepreneurship organization on the planet. Sam, when he was a founder himself, had built a super early location-based mobile app. This was, I think, even prior to smartphones, if I remember correctly. And so they were building this startup called Looped. And they had to go and partner up with a big kind of phone carrier, right, to really bring their technology to tons and tons of consumers. And they'd worked on this deal, a potential partnership that would be company defining for a really long time, only to hear that company ultimately told them that they decided to go with a competitor of theirs. What did Sam Altman and team do? They didn't just accept defeat. They knew this deal is so important, so valuable, we can't just accept this. And so what did they do? They bought a bunch of tickets, I think from San Francisco to New York. And they flew to New York the next day from San Francisco, and they happened to be in the area and showed up at that company's office, asking just for a few minutes to have another quick conversation about the technology, the partnership, and why it didn't work out. And apparently, that was, what saved the company at that point. There's an article about the story that we're going to link up in this video, in the notes of this video, of how meeting in person completely changed the perception of that, partner. And within an hour or 2 hours, they decided to drop the original pick they had of a technology provider and partner and to choose Sam Altman's company. And how did they do it? They showed up in person when the deal was already lost. You can do the same thing when somebody goes quiet for a really long time, right? You keep sending them emails, you keep sending them messages, you left a few voicemails, they just don't respond anymore. You had invested so much in the relationship. It's worth an incredible amount. You might just want to happen to be in the area, stop by, shake some hands. I know that it feels desperate. I know that it can feel overwhelming. I know that most people would feel very nervous doing that. And in many cases, I'm not going to lie, it's not going to work. You're going to show up in person and nobody's going to be there. Or you're going to show up in person and the person's going to come out and say, hi, but I don't have time. I have meetings all day long. Can't meet you right now. But if you're just persistent enough, some people might even say, well, if you have meetings all day, when's your last meeting? At 5? Cool. Let me walk you to your car or to the cab or something. I'll come back. I'll wait here, right? These are drastic measures, but drastic times sometimes call for them. And these types of showing up in person, making yourself undeniable, right? You can't be archived, deleted, or ignored as easily when you're in person in front of another human being. That can make or break a deal. And oftentimes that showing up in person, selling in person, connecting in person has turned around deals. Deals that went quiet got closed. Deals that were lost got closed. Really important, impactful things. Careers have been changed using the simple technique. It takes some courage. It takes a little bit of metaphorical balls, right? You have to be gutsy to show up somewhere, unannounced. Sometimes you can, if this is too much for you, you could just send them an email and say, hey, I'm going to be in the area. Thank you for telling me no. I'm going to be in the area tomorrow. I'm going to drop by and just shake hands, have a little gift for you, right? Or whatever it is. But showing up in person can make or break a deal and sometimes can turn around things in a way that an email or a call could never, ever do. You, just like any other salesperson and sales team in the world today, even with all the technology we have and all the hype around AI and automation and everything else that's going to happen in the future of this world, showing up in person, connecting human to human will never, ever go out of style until computers make all the buying decisions, right? Then, humans are out of the selling game. But as long as humans still make decisions, human-to-human interaction connection will always trump and win if you know how to use it, if you use it appropriately at the right time in the right way. So, this is the tip I wanted to share. Talk a little bit about in-person sales. Talk about in-person, the show-up, follow-up hack. I just happened to be in the area. Use it wisely, and then come back and report the results with us. Make sure to send me an email, stelly@close.io. Always happy to hear from you. Make sure to subscribe to our blog if you haven't yet, blog.close.io. And until next time, let's go get them.